Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson. This program is aimed at English learners, so we speak a little slower and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
Today on the program, you will hear from Kelly Jean Kelly and Pete Musto. Later, Steve Ember will present our American history series, The Making of a Nation. But first, here is Kelly Jean Kelly.
As 2018 comes to a close, many people are thinking about loved ones or friends they lost this year. When Americans want to say they are sorry about someone's loss, they offer their sympathies or condolences. And so, our condolences to you for anyone you are mourning. Today, we want to note some public figures all of us lost over the past 12 months. Actors who died this year include Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane in the 1978 film Superman, and 3 other Superman movies. Vern Troyer was Mini-Me in 2 Austin Powers movies. Burt Reynolds was in movies and television from the 1950s through the 2000s. And Eunice Gayson was James Bond's girlfriend in Bond's first 2 films. Arthur Mitchell and Paul Taylor were both dancers. Neil Simon and Ntozake Shange wrote plays. Ursula K. Le Guin, V.S. Naipaul, Tom Wolfe, and Philip Roth wrote books. Robert Indiana was an artist who made the love sign. Businesswoman Kate Spade designed clothes. Gary Kurtz produced the first Star Wars movie. Stan Lee invented Spider-Man. And Paul Allen co-founded the technology company Microsoft. Diplomat Kofi Annan was the head of the United Nations. And singer Aretha Franklin was the Queen of Soul. Robin Leach, who presented Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, signed off one last time. Chef Anthony Bourdain ate his last meal. The Reverend Billy Graham said his final prayer. Former U.S. President George H.W. Bush joined his wife of 73 years, Barbara Bush. And physicist Stephen Hawking disappeared into the universe. I'm Kelly Jean Kelly.
A Portland, Oregon man has become the first person to travel across Antarctica by himself without receiving any assistance. Colin O'Brady completed the 1,500-kilometer trip on Wednesday. He crossed the continent in 54 days. Friends, family, and other people followed his progress through messages and pictures he left on social media. O'Brady spoke with his wife, Jenna Besaw, by telephone soon after he completed the journey. It was an emotional call, she said. He seemed overwhelmed by love and gratitude, and he really wanted to say thank you to all of us. The 33-year-old O'Brady documented the trip on the social networking service Instagram. He called his journey the impossible first. He wrote Wednesday that he traveled the last 129 kilometers in one big final push to the finish line. The distance took over 1 day to complete. O'Brady wrote, "While the last 32 hours were some of the most challenging hours of my life, they have quite honestly been some of the best moments I have ever experienced." The day before, he wrote that he was in the zone and thought he could make it to the end without stopping. "I'm listening to my body and taking care of the details to keep myself safe," he wrote. "I called home and talked to my mom, sister, and wife. I promised them I will stop when I need to." Other people have traveled across Antarctica, but they all had some form of assistance. They either had better, more plentiful supplies or devices that helped move them forward. In 2016, British explorer Henry Worsley died in his attempt to travel alone across Antarctica unassisted. Worsley's friend, Lewis Rudd, also from Britain, is currently attempting an unaided solo journey in Worsley's honor. He was competing against O'Brady to be the first to do it. Bisaw told the Associated Press that her husband plans to stay on Antarctica until Rudd finishes his trip.
The world is full of different sounds. Some sounds are pleasing to hear, like a bird's voice. Other sounds hurt your ears, like a loud machine. But how do we explain in words what a sound is? For example, how do you describe the sound a dog makes? Also, does everyone hear that sound the same way? Every language in the world has words that express sounds. These are called onomatopoetic words. When a person says an onomatopoetic word, the sound of the word copies the natural sound the word is identifying. Let's say you walk past an angry dog. What sound does the dog make? Woof, woof, woof. When a native English speaker says the word woof, the pronunciation is somewhat similar to the sound the dog makes, but a native Russian speaker would not agree. They would say dogs make the sound gaf, gaf. A native Korean speaker would say mung, mung. These sounds are expressed differently in different languages because every language uses sound in different ways. The noises animals make are not the only examples of onomatopoetic words. Imagine you are walking down a street on a rainy day. A car drives by very fast. Zoom. As the car passes you, it drives through some water. Splash. You close the front of your jacket to protect yourself. Zip. These words are all nouns that express the sound effect you are hearing. Some sounds even define the objects that make them. Do you remember closing your jacket to protect yourself? The zipper is the object that connects the front parts of a jacket by joining the sets of metal teeth along the edges. In comic books, we often see these sound effects written in the pictures. These words help the reader imagine sounds in the story. Onomatopoetic words are not only nouns, though. Imagine you are in a quiet restaurant. Suddenly, the people next to you start to have an argument.
I can't believe you lied to me.
Shh! We are in public.
Don't shush me.
When you tell someone shh, you are saying the situation requires quiet. In the conversation you just heard, Anna responds to Jonathan by saying, "Don't shh me." In this case, Anna is using shh as a verb. She means to say, "Don't tell me to be quiet." Another example is one you probably hear every day. When you use a computer, you choose objects on the screen using a device called a mouse. Click. But the action of choosing an object on a computer screen using a mouse is called clicking. Now think back to the car passing you very quickly in the rain. What was the sound it made? Zoom. But you can also say, "The car zoomed by me." This means the car drove by you at a very high speed. Sometimes onomatopoetic words are even used as adjectives. If you see something explode, you will often see the word boom used to describe the sound. This is because the sound of an explosion is low and deep, the way English speakers pronounce the word boom. Now listen to the actor James Earl Jones.
Look, I can't tell you the secret of life, and I don't have any answers for you. I don't give interviews, and I'm no longer a public figure. I just want to be left alone.
His voice sounds low and deep. You could say his voice is booming. Onomatopoetic words are not often used in formal language, but they are very common in everyday speech, and there are hundreds of examples. They make languages more creative. Writers and musicians have used these types of words for many years to find a connection with the natural world. Just listen to the music group Ylvis as they make an entire song about onomatopoeia.
Dog goes woof, cat goes meow, bird goes tweet, and mouse goes squeak. Cow goes moo, frog goes croak, and the elephant goes toot. Ducks say quack, and fish go blub, and the seal goes ow, ow, ow. But there's one sound that no one knows. What does the fox say?
I'm Pete Musto.
From VOA Learning English, welcome to The Making of a Nation. I'm Steve Ember. John Quincy Adams was sworn in as President of the United States on March 4th, 1825. A big crowd came to the Capitol building for the ceremony. All the leaders of government were there: senators, congressmen, Supreme Court justices, and James Monroe. Monroe's 2 terms as president were ending. President-elect Adams focused his inaugural address on unity. Adams said the Constitution and the representative democracy of the United States had proved a success. The nation was free and strong and stretched across the continent from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. He noted that during the past 10 years, political party differences had eased. So now, he said, it was time for the people to settle their differences and make a truly national government. Adams closed his speech by recognizing that he was a minority president. No candidate had received a majority of electoral votes, so the House of Representatives had to make the decision. The House chose Adams as the next president. He told the crowd gathered at the Capitol that he needed the help of everyone in the years to come. Presidents-elect used to give their inaugural address before their swearing in. So after his speech, John Quincy Adams took the oath of office that made him the 6th President of the United States. His father was John Adams, the 2nd president. John Quincy's mother, Abigail, made sure he received an excellent education. Historian Harlow Giles Unger wrote a biography of John Quincy Adams. Quincy, incidentally, is how the family pronounced it. The historian tells this story about Abigail Adams and her son in 1775 in Massachusetts during the Revolutionary War.
When her firstborn son, John Quincy, was 7, they heard the cannon fire in the distance. They went up to the top of the hill behind their farmhouse and could look across Boston Harbor and see the Battle of Bunker Hill. And she took her boy by the hand. They went back down to the house, and she started melting down the family pewter with John Quincy helping her and making musket balls for the American Revolutionary troops.
Abigail and John Adams were strong patriots. They were one of the founding families of America. Harlow Giles Unger says Abigail Adams raised John Quincy to serve his country.
She told her son that if you do not grow up to be a great leader of this country, it will be because of your own laziness and obstinacy. She and her husband, John Adams, at that point decided to raise their son to be the President of the United States.
As a boy, John Quincy Adams learned to speak at least 4 languages and read Greek and Latin. He studied Shakespeare's plays. He traveled in Europe. He worked with his father in American consulates and embassies. He graduated from Harvard and was working as a lawyer by the age of 23.
He was a brilliant young boy and man.
For about 25 years, Adams held mostly appointed jobs. He was ambassador to the Netherlands, Germany, Russia, and Britain. He helped lead the negotiations that ended the War of 1812 between Britain and the United States. And he served 8 years as Secretary of State. Adams spent most of his career working in public service. Harlow Giles Unger says he could be impatient, especially with lawmakers.
He despised most of the politicians he met in Congress because he found them to be ignorant and self-serving, with no sense of patriotism and sense of obligation to the nation.
John Quincy Adams did not care for political battles. When he became president, he tried to bring his political opponents and the different parts of the country together in his cabinet. His opponents, however, refused to serve. And although his cabinet included Southerners, he did not really have the support of the South. In his first message to Congress, President Adams described his ideas about the national government. The chief purpose of the government, he said, was to improve the lives of the people it governed. To do this, he offered a national program of building roads and canals. He also proposed a national university and a national scientific center. Adams said Congress should not be limited only to making laws to improve the nation's economic life. He said it should make laws to improve the arts and sciences too. Many people of the West and South did not believe that the Constitution gave the federal government the power to do all these things. They believed that these powers belonged to the states. Their representatives in Congress rejected Adams' proposals. Harlow Giles Unger says some of the disagreements during Adams' presidency helped start the American Civil War more than 30 years later in 1861.
The country was now splitting. The South, most of the South, had never accepted the Constitution as such. The Constitution did away with state sovereignty, but many Americans never accepted that, and especially in the South.
The political picture in the United States began to change during the administration of John Quincy Adams. His opponents won control of both houses of Congress in the elections of 1826. Adams' opponents called themselves Democrats. They supported Andrew Jackson and wanted him to win the next presidential election. Democrats needed the support of both the West and the South to elect Jackson. So they proposed a bill that appeared to help the West. The bill involved import taxes. A number of Western states wanted duties on industrial goods imported from other countries. The purpose was to protect their own industries. Southern states, however, opposed the import duties. They produced no industrial goods that needed protection. They argued that the Constitution did not give the government in Washington the right to approve such taxes. The Democrats expected Congress to defeat the bill they proposed. They thought the West would be grateful that the Democrats had tried to help them, and the South would be happy that there would be no import taxes. But to the Democrats' surprise, many congressmen from the Northeast joined with lawmakers from the West to support the bill. They did so even though the bill would harm industries in the Northeast. The Northerners wanted to keep the idea of protective trade taxes alive. The bill passed in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. This left President Adams with a difficult decision. Should he sign it into law or should he veto it? If he signed the bill, it would show he believed that the Constitution allowed protective duties. That decision would create even more opposition to him in the South. If he vetoed it, then he would lose support in the West and Northeast. Adams signed the bill, but he made clear that Congress was fully responsible for it. Democrats in Congress made other attempts to weaken support for Adams. For example, they claimed that he was misusing government money. They tried to show that he and his father before him had become rich from government service. Others accused him of giving government jobs to his supporters. This charge was false. Top administration officials had urged Adams to give government jobs only to men who were loyal to him. But Adams had refused. He felt that as long as someone had done nothing wrong, he should continue in his job. During his 4 years as president, Adams removed 12 people from government jobs. In each case, the person had failed to do his work or had done something criminal. Adams often gave jobs to people who did not support him politically. He believed it was wrong to give a person a job just for political reasons. Many of Adams' supporters could not understand. They had worked hard to get him elected. Their support for him cooled. Historian Harlow Giles Unger says John Quincy Adams was never able to meet the high expectations many had for him.
His presidency was a complete failure. He was able to accomplish nothing.
The political battle between Adams' Republican Party and Jackson's Democrats remained bitter. Perhaps the worst fighting took place in the press. Each side had its own newspaper for support. The Daily National Journal supported the administration. The United States Telegraph supported Andrew Jackson. At first, the pro-administration newspaper called for national unity and an end to personal attacks. Then things changed. The paper had to defend against charges of political wrongdoing within Adams' party. It needed to turn readers away from these problems. So it printed a pamphlet that had been used against Andrew Jackson during an election campaign. The pamphlet accused Jackson of many bad things. The most damaging part involved the wife of another man. I'm Steve Ember, inviting you to join us next time for The Making of a Nation, American History from VOA Learning English.
And that's our program for today. Listen again tomorrow to learn English through stories from around the world. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson.